We interrupt this program for an urgent news bulletin.
On October 1957, radios across America crackle with a sound that shouldn't exist. A steady, mechanical beep, 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 drifting down from the sky. It was Russia's Sputnik, the first artificial satellite ever placed into orbit around Earth. Children tracked it with telescopes. Newspapers print orbital paths. Within weeks, U.S. intelligence reports warn that the same Russian rockets putting satellites into orbit can deliver nuclear warheads across continents. The U.S. suffered public embarrassment and a growing fear that American power now looks fragile on the world stage. Inside the Pentagon sits Leonard Rifle, a nuclear physicist in his mid-30s. He looks at a grainy image of the moon frozen on the screen. 3 Air Force officers sit behind him. One clears his throat. The nation is waiting for America's response. Rifle doesn't answer. Another voice presses him. We need to send a bigger satellite. Still nothing as he continues. He stares at the moon. Another man asks, "Can we even top the Russians?" Rifle stands. He looks at the concerned room and says, "We're going to nuke the moon." Rodney James Evans was born on April 14, 1948, in Florala, Alabama. His parents ran a small dry cleaning business and believed the war they'd lived through was finished for good. Florala was the kind of place that trusted routines. Shirts were pressed, shoes were polished on Saturdays, church bells rang on Sundays, whether anyone felt holy or not. The world, as far as Rodney's parents were concerned, had learned its lesson. Rodney grew up in a stable life. He learned how to fold before he learned how to read. His father let him stand on a wooden crate to help hang jackets, telling him, "Hard work keeps a man safe." Rodney believed him. Across the street lived Barbara Johagan, his first friend. In 2nd grade, they walked to school together, kicked stones down the road, shared biscuits wrapped in paper towels. Nothing about their lives felt fragile. At night, Rodney lay on the floor, listening to the radio, while his parents counted receipts at the kitchen table. Until one evening in October 1957, when Rodney was 9 years old, the radio changed its tone. The announcer's voice tightened. "The Soviet Union has successfully launched the world's first artificial satellite into space." Rodney didn't understand the words artificial or satellite. He understood the silence that followed. His father stopped counting. His mother sat down without saying why. The announcer kept talking about rockets, about orbit, about something circling above them even now, a metal thing, watching, beeping. Rodney went outside. The sky over Florala looked the same as it always had. Stars scattered like nails hammered into black wood. Peaceful, empty. Barbara stood barefoot on her porch, listening to her own radio through the screen door. "Can you see it?" she asked. Rodney squinted until his eyes hurt. "No," he said. Inside, the radio explained what the adults were afraid to say. If the Russians could put something up there, they could send something down here. The war his parents thought was over had simply learned how to hide. Rodney grew up as the world grew louder around him, and when his parents finally bought a television in the late 1950s, it became the center of their evenings. Rodney and Barbara sitting on the floor while the news repeated the same message night after night, that America looked weak, embarrassed, fragile on the world stage. "Why do they keep saying that?" Barbara asked once, her chin on her knees, and Rodney shrugged. "Maybe they want people scared." While his father muttered from his chair, "Scared people listen better." And far from Florala, behind locked doors, the U.S. Air Force quietly commissioned Project A119, a classified study led by physicist Leonard Rifle to examine detonating a nuclear weapon on the moon as a visible display of American power. "The world has to see it. It needs to be seen by the naked eye," one said. "A flash big enough to end the argument. Russia's rockets can take them to space. Ours can detonate on the moon," another replied. Permission was granted to study the use of a nuclear device. A young astronomer, Carl Sagan, was called in to make it happen, but Sagan raised a critical objection, pointing to his calculations, saying, "The moon's surface is covered in fine dust. A detonation wouldn't give you a clean flash. It would throw up a cloud and smother the light," adding quietly, "You'd blind the spectacle you're trying to create." And after nearly a year of planning, the project was abandoned without public mention. Back in Alabama, Rodney kept working in his father's shop, saving his wages and walking home with Barbara in the evenings. And one night, as they passed the old church, Rodney nudged her and said, "You know, this this church would be a great place to marry you." And Barbara blushed without looking at him and replied, "Well, don't take too long." At 18, they did exactly that. Childhood friends turned husband and wife, young, in love, and believing the future was set for them. By 1965, the world felt like it had tilted. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution passed quietly in Washington, giving the U.S. president unchecked authority to escalate in Vietnam. On the streets, the papers and the radios told the story as triumph. America standing firm, showing the Soviets who was in charge. In the classrooms, in the town squares, in offices far from battlefields, men in suits bragged about power and vision. They never said the word death. They never said the word fear. They spoke of nations and prestige. Rodney watched it all from Florala, the slow march of news turning into orders. Around him, the men in town were drafted one by one. His father's laundry business, once humming with steam and chatter, collapsed under the weight of inflation. Money dried up. Customers disappeared. The family went broke. One evening, his father pulled him aside, eyes tired but firm. "Rodney, maybe it's time you did what men in this country are doing. Join the army, make a living." Rodney had been thinking of this for a little while. He'd make money and come back to start a family, secure a house, and be a national hero to his children. On the day he left, Barbara held his hand longer than usual, pressing her forehead to his. "You better be right back," she whispered. He laughed lightly, hiding the tremor in his chest. The government kept its lists and measured its scorecards against Russia, and the young men in America were just pawns. As the plane lifted, he pressed his hand against the window, staring down at Florala, knowing he would return changed, if he returned at all. By late 1965, draft notices began appearing in nearby towns. Recruiters came to schools and churches, speaking about doing your part. In Washington, the city hummed with quiet panic behind closed doors. Men in gray suits leaned over blueprints, muttering equations, arrows, and trajectories. They had recruited the brightest minds in the country, rocket scientists, engineers, young physicists, and thrown billions of dollars at them. The U.S. government again was up to something. Half a world away, Rodney James Evans waded through mud that sucked at his boots and trousers. The jungle of Vietnam was alive and cruel. The air stung with sweat and smoke. Insects drummed against his skin, and every snap of a branch could be a bullet. He had seen friends die, quietly, suddenly, horribly. Each morning, he woke wishing it could all end. The war, the heat, the screaming. He wrote to Barbara from basic training, saying, "They keep saying it won't be long." She replied, "Everyone on TV says we're making progress." Neither could know the reality. U.S. troop levels had jumped from roughly 23,000 advisors in 1964 to over 184,000 by the end of 1965, and Soviet and Chinese-supplied weapons were appearing in enemy hands. Vietnam was no longer a distant patch of jungle on a map. It had become a proxy battlefield, where Washington and Moscow measured resolve without ever firing at each other directly, and young men like Rodney became the expendable proof. One night, as a distant artillery round shook the ground beneath him, Rodney stumbled into a small tent. Inside, a battered television flickered, showing President John F. Kennedy speaking. "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth." Rodney's heart sank. While he fought and bled in Vietnam, somewhere else, men in offices were planning how to outshine Russia, indifferent to the lives being spent in the mud. He pressed his face to the screen and whispered into the humid night, "I just want to go home." July 20th, 1969. Televisions glowed in living rooms across the country. Crowds gathered. Children sat on carpets, while adults leaned forward in awe. The government called it destiny, as the Apollo 11 took off. No one mentioned Vietnam. Meanwhile, in the suffocating jungles of Vietnam, Rodney James Evans trudged back toward camp. His uniform was torn, as blood seeping from a wound in his side. Exhaustion weighed him down, every muscle screaming. He reached his tent and noticed a letter lying on the ground. The envelope bore Barbara's handwriting. He smiled, carefully opening it. "Dear Rodney, please make sure you are sitting before you read this. Barbara got into a car accident today. She spent many hours in the hospital. The doctors did what they could, but she didn't make it. We're making arrangements for her funeral, and she'll be buried in her hometown. I do hope you're safe. Take care of yourself, Rodney." The paper slipped from his hands. He didn't cry at first. He just stared at the dirt floor, lips moving without sound. Across the United States, the nation held its breath. Families leaned forward, eyes wide, hands gripping one another. The Saturn V rocket had delivered men into orbit. Commentators spoke in hushed, reverent tones. They're about to land. Rodney, still bleeding, still broken, rose from the tent. Duty pulled him forward. He returned to the jungle. On a narrow trail lined with thick foliage, an ambush erupted. Bullets tore through the air. Shouts and explosions filled the night. Rodney ducked, returned fire where he could, but a single shot found him in the chest. He collapsed. He stared to the sky as he tried to find his final breaths. In the United States, the rocket landed. Armstrong and Aldrin walked on the moon. Triumph was broadcast across the globe. America had topped the Russians with Vietnam, and now the moon landing. The nation celebrated, and crowds took to the streets in happiness and joy. Just a few roads away, Rodney James Evans was buried alongside Barbara Geohagan, his childhood love, in a quiet plot far from government halls and television cameras. Friends and family lowered them into the earth. Dirt covered their hands as the family grieved their loss. A friend, trembling, said, "They gave their all, and the world never noticed."